Hi Erie, Miss Ogden here. Just wanted to go through what is going to be lesson 1 of your summer 2 term. This term we are going to be looking at film music. For this topic today, you will need with you your booklets that have been sent home to you. If you have any issues with them, you can also find each lesson on Show My Homework. You will also need pen and maybe some pencils and some pencil crayons, but that is completely your choice. Enjoy the lesson, make sure to stick around for the whole thing because there's a lot of important information. Now you've got rid of my face, we can just focus on the lesson. So today, obviously, we are going to be looking at an introduction to film music. Today, I would like you to understand how instrumentation would impact a visual image, learn a little bit about what a motif is and understand about the history of film music, and develop your own character for a film that we are going to be creating during this topic. So I'd like you now to write as many films as you possibly can in 1 minute. Pause the video now, you have 1 minute, go. Here's just a few I came up with. Obviously there are so many more that you could have had. That isn't even what I got in a minute, it's all that I could fit on the page. I did do this task recently and managed to get, I think I got 42. So if you beat that, really well done. Let me know in the comments or on an email. Now, I want you to think about this image here. What type of music would you put to that image and why? Just pause the video and write down your ideas in your booklet. Now we're going to go that one step further. What type of instruments would you use if you were composing a piece of music for this image? I'm going to play you 5 sounds now. I want you to think, do any of these 5 sounds work? Why? Why not? What is about them that might not work? Those 5 examples, you might have noticed I repeated a couple of the instruments. The sounds 1 and 3 that you heard were both flute. 2 and 4 were a bassoon, members of the woodwind family, and then number 5 was a tuba. I used the same musical idea, but what I did was for the 3rd to 4th and 5th time, I put it into a minor key. Did that make a difference? Did it work with that image? I'd love to know your thoughts. What would you put to that image? Make sure that you've written your thoughts now in your booklet. Now, we're going to be moving on to quite a lot of key information. A leitmotif. This is now your activity 1.2. A leitmotif is a frequently recurring short melodic or harmonic idea which is associated with a character, event, concept, idea, object or situation. And it can be used to directly represent them being on screen, or it could be done indirectly to show that they are being talked about or that they're not actually in the scene. Some famous examples: Jaws, Harry Potter, Batman. I'm sure if we all remember their Jaws. Ba-da, ba-da, using that semitone phrase. Throughout this next couple of slides, it might be worth pressing pause at any point so that you can get some ideas down on the page for activity 1.2. Before we move on, I thought it would be interesting and helpful for you to actually understand about film music and where it comes from and how it's derived. The first early films were actually known as silent cinema. They had no soundtrack underneath them, and the music was performed live. Usually this was by a pianist or an organist. This was often improvised. Can you remember what that word means again? Don't worry if not. It means being made up on the spot. The first soundtracks to appear within the film and to be edited together appeared in the 1920s, and it was actually music that already existed from famous composers. They took music from operas and ballets because it was easier to do than to compose new pieces and to record them. They took some works from Wagner and Verdi from their operas and their ballets. I would really recommend looking at a 1920s film soundtrack if you can. Things changed obviously then between the 1930s and 1940s. A lot more money came into the industry, and Hollywood hired a number of composers, especially for big famous artist films. A different style of soundtrack was created. If we move forward though to the 1960s and the 70s, a lot more jazz and experimental music was used. However, today there's a big blend of different styles of music. You might think about your favourite film. Does it have any of these things in there? Does it use some pop music? Does it have some electronic influences? Does it maybe use some synthesizers? Or does it have some classical influences? I know I'm thinking about Love Actually in my head, and it's got all of those in there at some point. Film music can be divided into two categories, so music contained within the action and background music. Music contained within the action is referred to as diegetic. This means that it's included in the story, so if somebody was washing up at the sink and the radio was on, it would be there. Most of the film music that you hear is non-diegetic. Background music is often referred to as underscoring. So it adds to the mood, it reinforces what the character's feeling or the emotions or the dramatic developments. This is the stuff that, to be honest with you, you probably won't notice. For all films to be successful, it has to have music in it. I don't know if you've ever watched a film where there's no music. It makes a massive difference. It makes you feel uncertain. It doesn't tell you what emotions you should be feeling. It doesn't tell you where you are or how your character should be feeling. So it's important then for film music to serve for these purposes, to move the action forward, to describe a character or their emotion, to add impact to the scene, to accompany scene changes, to move the action forward. But ultimately, it also has to fit with the style of the film. Now, Mickey Mousing is a technique that I just wanted to bring up with you. So it's when music is precisely synchronized within the events that's going on screen. Quite often it's used in comedy films. An example of this could be perhaps somebody slipping on a banana skin, and we could use a descending scale, ba-da-da-da-da, followed by a cymbal crash. Would look much better than me singing it. I will find an example for you at some point. In a film score, the orchestration, so how the instruments are put together and how they're played, and the instrumentation, what instruments there are there, can vary completely and can be so important. Think back to our topic earlier on where I showed you that picture. Did the instruments fit the colour that was suggested? I know a lot of films use muted brass to suggest something sinister, or chromaticism for somebody who is perhaps a villain. But they also use bagpipes to evoke, the thought of being in Scotland. For the rest of today's lesson, I'd like you to draw a character. It can be a hero or a villain. But this character is going to form quite a lot of your topic for this half term. I want to see them as colourful as you possibly can. I want you to think about a storyline for them. Could you annotate your work as well and think, what instruments would you use to describe them? What are their powers? Do they have any? If not, what ideally would they like to have? Do they have two identities? Do they have a secret identity and then an everyday identity? What do they do that is good or bad? And can you think of how a leitmotif could be used for them? Would it be to describe one of their feelings, or would it just be to describe them being on screen? There's a challenge there because I'm quite aware that some of you will get that really quickly. I'd like you to think about what style of music you're putting to that character and maybe even try it. As well, could you learn an existing leitmotif? Let's be honest, we can all learn Jaws, but could you perhaps learn Harry Potter? Could you perhaps learn something from James Bond, if you have the capability to do that? End the video now and use the rest of the lesson to carry on with activities 1.3 and 1.4. Keep yourself safe, speak to you soon.